Hey guys, Kevin, Go for Lax, and today we're going to go over how I break in my traditional. Now, it's important to know that each way someone strings their traditional pocket is different and unique to them. There are some things some people do, some things some people don't, and just because you see it one way and not another does not make it one way is better or the other. Same as stringing up mesh. Um, some people will only SI, some people will use a combo of different knots. If it works for you and it throws well and shoots well and plays well, doesn't matter. So we're going to go over a couple examples. Um, so let's go over just different examples of ways to attach the leathers to the head. So in a removable pocket, which means if this head breaks, you undo the top string and the sidewalls and the bottom string and can completely move it over to a new pocket. Ideally, that works best if, let's say, this is a command, if I was moving the same pocket into a command. Because for me, especially when I string a pocket, I string it to the aspects of the head. So if you moved it to another head, there may be some more fine tweaking. And I put a removable pocket in this one was due to this was when the command first came out, so I didn't know how durable the head would be, so I didn't want to break it while testing, which happens from time to time. And we're also using the Fire Threads crosslace when it first came out. So with all those, I wanted to experiment, and like I said, head breaks or the pocket's not right, I could just pop it out. The normal way to attach the leathers is through the top scoops, as you can see here. Pretty straightforward. Now, sidewall, personal preference. On heads, as you can see here, that have less holes, you really have less options, but you have to really make sure you can ratchet it down. So as you see here, in the two holes, I knotted it to make sure that it wouldn't slip a lot. One of the things I hate with traditionals is when those are loose and the pocket bags out because of that. What I love about the Stallion is you can knot it so those things are never sliding out. They're always going to remain consistent, and the only thing you adjust is the leathers itself. Which then brings us down to the bottom of the stick. So there are several ways. Let's see, let me use this one because it's probably a better example because it's green. You can either run a string through the bottom that loops through all the leathers and you attach the cross lace too. This is my preferred method, and it's something I stole from Greg Rose. I like it because it anchors the entire pocket to the bottom of the head, and the leathers are the ones that stretch out and move. For me, it's easier to adjust. I do not like cutting the leathers. There are some people that will cut the leathers and pull them through there. I've never been a fan of that, and that's probably because of the old school days when you didn't have the internet. I'm old. And you cut your leather, so you would have to call Allman, Bacharach, Laxworld, and see if they will ship you a leather, which wasn't really easy. So you wound up having to zip tie and duct tape that, and looked like crap, played like crap. So from that, I've always been traumatized, and I never cut the leathers. The other way is to, as Connor does, you loop the leather in, tie it around there, and tie it off. But again, my preferred method is that string below. Tie everything off on that. I like how it cinches not only the cross lace, but those bottom leathers to the head. Good. That's my opinion. You're entitled to yours or what you prefer. If you have a way that you think is better, leave a comment down below. All right, so in the earlier video, I showed you how I stretch my leathers. You haven't seen it? Go watch it. Otherwise, when you're done stretching your leathers, and I don't have them around here, they should stretch about a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/3 of an inch, depending on how well you stretch them. And the idea of that is that they're stretched out before you string them up, so your pocket's not bagging out as much when you play. So here's my method for how I break in a stick, and it takes time. It takes time, and there's small incremental adjustments you have to make along the way. It's going to get a little frustrating because you'll have 3 or 4 days where it throws perfectly, and then all of a sudden you throw a pass and you lose complete control. So we'll go over those steps of what I do to adjust it. So first thing I do, and this is an older head, and I wanted to use that because it's kind of good to demonstrate the differences between that and this head. And this is, we got a Stallion 700. And this is a De Beer Wizard, which back in the day was a really cool head, but now it's odd. Anyway, so my go-to pocket is a 6-diamond traditional. I like whip. Whip is not a bad 4-letter word. I feel that gives me the best amount of whip and overall ability for how I play. Now, if I was more of a shooter or things like that, I would probably move my pocket down. Pocket's a little low. My pocket's usually right about here right now. I would move the pocket down and maybe go to an 8-diamond, which is going to create a much quicker pocket, much quicker release. But for me, 6 is where it's at. Now, again, let's go into ways that you can string up. You have great tools like the Tri-Tree. If you've never strung a traditional before, I highly recommend you use that at least the first time. I mean, there's from time to time I'm messing around with a new pocket, and I use that if I string a women's pocket. I use Tri-Tree. It just helps with the tensioning and making sure everything's even. So, first time, highly recommend using that. What I typically do is I string the pockets completely flat. It's the old school way of stringing them. What I then do is I leave slack throughout the entire head, put a pocket screw in, and this is the Gate pocket screw. There's a lot of things Gate didn't do well, but this is one of them. This is phenomenal because you have the bar that you can slide in and out, so you can adjust the depth, and you're not trying to wedge it like the Brine one was, which is a little awkward. So for me, I string it completely flat. I stretch it out with this. I go through and adjust all the tensioning, and what you kind of want to look for is the rows where my 2 middle fingers are, everything is in line, and the same as on the other rows. So you want to make sure all your diamonds are symmetric throughout the entire pocket, and you want to pull them so they're snug, not super tight at this point. You want to pull them so they're snug and really gripping and biting into the leather. From there, the shooters aren't even in the head yet. I put the pocket screw in and adjust it to wherever I want the pocket. Then I dunk the head in a bucket of water and leave it overnight. So there's a big misnomer that getting leathers wet is going to ruin the pocket. In actuality, if you get good leathers like mine, or let's see if there's hand cut leathers like Minlax, Tim from Seller, Jason Zombie Mesh, Lax Room, Stringer Shack, my leathers, good. You buy crappy leathers, they're gonna go to crap when you get them wet. But it's important at the beginning to get the leathers wet, get the pocket screw in, and leave it overnight. Don't even put the shooters in. Just let it get a stretch where you want the pocket. So it'll help to start forming the pocket, because remember, the pocket was flat to begin with. From there, I usually put in at least 3 shooters, and as you can see here, they're rather loose. Why? Because you're going to spend a good deal of time adjusting them as the pocket breaks in. It's not like a mesh where you throw the shooters in once and you're done. This is where the constant adjustment between this and the pocket depth as the pocket stretches slightly is going to take all your work and all your focus. In fact, these leathers are just recently in there because for the first few times after the pocket stretches overnight and I wall ball without the leathers, without the shooters. I'm trying to see what I need to tweak in the pocket before I put the shooters in. So that's why the shooters look nice and clean here, because I've been using this without them. But now that they're in, you have a natural progression of the shooters. If you have 3, and that's kind of like the legal now, mine's got 4, but I haven't had my stick checked in a long time. Old. You want a natural progression, much like with the shooters in a mesh head, that your top one you want to be the tightest, second tightest, third tightest. If at any point, as I'm throwing that over far, as I'm running my hand up there, if it's catching on one of these 2 shooters, they are too tight. But really, for me, I want the ball coming off right here. Now, if this shooter's too loose, you're going to hear it click off the plastic, and that's it's annoying. So, what to do? Put the shooters in, again, relatively loose. You can see that there's gaps between them, and not even knot them or knot them loose in wall ball. As it's going through, and if the stick is starting to throw properly, slightly tighten the top one, wall ball for a little while. Then slightly tighten the middle one, and if everything's going right, tighten the loosest one at the bottom, and see where that takes you. If the stick is starting to throw well, you're on your way. So after wall balling, for at least the first week, what I do is immediately after it's done, I put the pocket screw that's now rolling around on my floor in here, and I tighten the bottom of this ever so slightly. So again, I'm getting that stretch in here, and I'll carry that process over and over again. It usually takes me anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Like, this thing took me forever just to get the pocket tweaked to where I wanted it, because in all actuality, this is the first time I went to an X or a universal spec head. Before that, the Stallion High School was always my go-to. So it took me a little longer to get used to the larger head. Now I love it. But again, it's going to take you time to get it tweaked in, and it's not something that you get your stick on Monday, like, oh, I'm going to play with it on Saturday. You have to plan ahead with these, and you have to give them some love and care to get them to where they are. Once they are, and everything is set up, you still have to do some maintenance and some tweaking. Again, periodically, I put the pocket screw in this one, and you can kind of see how it looks broken in. I put the pocket screw in this one. I pull this tight down here just to shallow the pocket slightly and to give it a stretch. And even then, if I'm going through and I'm shooting and something's off, I will still do that I loosen all my shooters and then go through the progression of tightening them to make sure I have the pocket release where I want. Because certain times, as the pocket breaks in, the shooters relax or release a little bit. Like as I'm talking, I notice the shooter is unstrung. And again, as I'm getting there, it's catching right where I want it to be. Things just come undtied, things stretch, so you need to go back and adjust them. But if you take the 5 or 10 minutes throughout the week to make sure everything's tight, that it's working right, these sticks will last you a long, long time. For example, I got this just when it came out, and I use it regularly. So, final thing as I'm looking at this, how can you start to tell when your pocket is broken in? The easiest thing is, as I zoom in here, that you can see where these intersections or these interlocks meet with the leather. If you pull it down, you'll see that it's biting into the leather. If it's biting into the leather, that means that everything is stretching out and working properly. If these aren't tight, what's going to happen is the diamonds are going to start to shift, and your pocket's always going to be inconsistent. So when it's in there, it's important, especially if you've never strung one of these before, or you have someone that strung it poorly, to go through and make sure these interlocks are tight. They don't have to be cinched tight, but they have to be tight enough so they're not going to slide up and down in your pocket. So that's just a brief recap of how I break in my sticks, why I string them like that. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. More importantly, if you have something you do differently, put a comment down below, and also tell me why you think that that's the best way. Thanks.